Exodus chapters 36 through 40 of the Bible, Douay Rheims, 1899 American edition. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 36. Bezaleel, therefore, and Oholiab, and every wise man, to whom the Lord gave wisdom and understanding, to know how to work artificially, made the things that are necessary for the uses of the sanctuary, and which the Lord commanded. And when Moses had called them, and every skillful man to whom the Lord had given wisdom, and such as of their own accord had offered themselves to the making of the work, he delivered all the offerings of the children of Israel unto them. And while they were earnest about the work, the people daily in the morning offered their vows. Whereupon the workmen, being constrained to come, said to Moses, The people offereth more than is necessary. Moses therefore commanded proclamation to be made by the crier's voice, Let neither man nor woman offer any more for the work of the sanctuary. And so they ceased from offering gifts, because the things that were offered did suffice, and were too much. And all the men that were wise of heart to accomplish the work of the tabernacle made 10 curtains of twisted fine linen, and violet, and purple, and scarlet twice dyed, with varied work, and the art of embroidering. The length of one curtain was 28 cubits, and the breadth 4. All the curtains were of the same size. And he joined 5 curtains one to another, and the other 5 he coupled one to another. He made also loops of violet in the edge of the curtain on both sides, and in the edge of the other curtain in like manner, that the loops might meet on against another, and might be joined each with the other. Whereupon also he cast 50 rings of gold, that might catch the loops of the curtains, and they might be made one tabernacle. He made also 11 curtains of goat's hair to cover the roof of the tabernacle. One curtain was 30 cubits long, and 4 cubits broad. All the curtains were of one measure, 5 of which he joined apart, and the other 6 apart. And he made 50 loops in the edge of one curtain, and 50 in the edge of another curtain, that they might be joined one to another, and 50 buckles of brass, wherewith the roof might be knit together, that of all the curtains there might be made one covering. He made also a cover for the tabernacle of rams' skins dyed red, and another cover over that of violet skins. He made also the boards of the tabernacle of setim wood standing. The length of one board was 10 cubits, and the breadth was 1 cubit and a half. There were 2 mortices throughout every board, that one might be joined to the other. And in this manner he made for all the boards of the tabernacle, of which 20 were at the south side southward, with 40 sockets of silver. 2 sockets were put under one board on the 2 sides of the corners, where the mortices of the sides end in the corners. At that side also of the tabernacle that looketh toward the north he made 20 boards, with 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets for every board. But against the west, to wit, at that side of the tabernacle, which looketh to the sea, he made 6 boards, and 2 others at each corner of the tabernacle behind, which were also joined from beneath unto the top, and went together into one joint. Thus he did on both sides at the corners. So there were in all 8 boards, And they had 16 sockets of silver, to wit, 2 sockets under every board. He made also bars of setim wood, 5 to hold together the boards of one side of the tabernacle, and 5 others to join together the boards of the other side. And besides these, 5 other bars at the west side of the tabernacle towards the sea. He made also another bar that might come by the midst of the boards from corner to corner. And the board works themselves he overlaid with gold, casting for them sockets of silver, and their rings he made of gold, through which the bars might be drawn, and he covered the bars themselves with plates of gold. He made also a veil of violet, and purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen, varied and distinguished with embroidery, and 4 pillars of setim wood, which with their heads he overlaid with gold, casting for them sockets of silver. He made also a hanging in the entry of the tabernacle of violet, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen, with the work of an embroiderer, and 5 pillars with their heads, which he covered with gold, and their sockets he cast of brass. End of chapter 36. Chapter 37. And Bezaleel made also the ark of setim wood. It was 2 cubits and a half in length, and 1 cubit and a half in breadth, and the height was of 1 cubit and a half. And he overlaid it with the purest gold within and without. And he made to it a crown of gold round about, casting 4 rings of gold at the 4 corners thereof, 2 rings in one side, and 2 in the other. And he made bars of setim wood, which he overlaid with gold, and he put them into the rings that were at the sides of the ark to carry it. He made also the propitiatory, that is, the oracle, of the purest gold, 2 cubits and a half in length, and 1 cubit and a half in breadth. 2 cherubims also of beaten gold, which he set on the 2 sides of the propitiatory, 1 cherub in the top of one side, and the other cherub in the top of the other side, 2 cherubims at the 2 ends of the propitiatory, spreading their wings and covering the propitiatory, and looking one towards the other and towards it. He made also the table of setim wood, in length 2 cubits, and in breadth 1 cubit, and in height it was 1 cubit and a half. And he overlaid it with the finest gold, and he made to it a golden ledge round about. And to the ledge itself he made a polished crown of gold, of 4 fingers' breadth, and upon the same another golden crown. And he cast 4 rings of gold, which he put in the 4 corners at each foot of the table, over against the crown. And he put the bars into them, that the table might be carried. And the bars also themselves he made of setim wood, and overlaid them with gold, and the vessels for the divers uses of the table, dishes, bowls, and cups, and censers of pure gold, wherein the libations are to be offered. He made also the candlestick of beaten work of the finest gold, from the shaft whereof its branches, its cups and bowls and lilies came out, 6 on the 2 sides, 3 branches on one side, and 3 on the other, 3 cups in manner of a nut on each branch, and bowls withal, and lilies, and 3 cups of the fashion of a nut in another branch, and bowls withal, and lilies. The work of the 6 branches that went out from the shaft of the candlestick was equal. And in the shaft itself were 4 cups after the manner of a nut, and bowls withal at every one, and lilies, and bowls under 2 branches in 3 places, which together make 6 branches going out from one shaft. So both the bowls and the branches were of the same, all beaten work of the purest gold. He made also the 7 lamps with their snuffers, and the vessels where the snuffings were to be put out, of the purest gold. The candlestick with all the vessels thereof weighed a talent of gold. He made also the altar of incense of setim wood, being a cubit on every side foursquare, and in height 2 cubits, from the corners of which went out horns. And he overlaid it with the purest gold, with its grate, and the sides, and the horns. And he made to it a crown of gold round about, and 2 golden rings under the crown at each side, that the bars might be put into them, and the altar be carried. And the bars themselves he made also of setim wood, and overlaid them with plates of gold. He compounded also the oil for the ointment of sanctification, and incense of the purest spices, according to the work of a perfumer. End of chapter 37. Chapter 38. He made also the altar of holocaust of setim wood, 5 cubits square, and 3 in height. The horns whereof went out from the corners, and he overlaid it with plates of brass. And for the uses thereof he prepared divers vessels of brass, cauldrons, tongs, flesh hooks, pot hooks, and fire pans. And he made the grate thereof of brass, in manner of a net, and under it in the midst of the altar a hearth, casting 4 rings at the 4 ends of the net at the top, to put in bars to carry it. And he made the bars of setim wood, and overlaid them with plates of brass. And he drew them through the rings that stood out in the sides of the altar, and the altar itself was not solid, but hollow, of boards, and empty within. He made also the laver of brass, with the foot thereof, of the mirrors of the women that watch at the door of the tabernacle. He made also the court in the south side, whereof were hangings of fine twisted linen, of 100 cubits, 20 pillars of brass, with their sockets, the heads of the pillars, and the whole graving of the work of silver. In like manner, at the north side the hangings, the pillars, and the sockets and heads of the pillars were of the same measure, and work, and metal. But on that side that looketh to the west, there were hangings of 50 cubits, 10 pillars of brass with their sockets, and the heads of the pillars, and all the graving of the work of silver. Moreover, towards the east he prepared hangings of 50 cubits, 15 cubits of which were on one side with 3 pillars and their sockets, and on the other side, for between the two he made the entry of the tabernacle, there were hangings equally of 15 cubits, and 3 pillars, and as many sockets. All the hangings of the court were woven with twisted linen. The sockets of the pillars were of brass, and their heads with all their gravings of silver, and he overlaid the pillars of the court also with silver. And he made in the entry thereof an embroidered hanging of violet, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen, that was 20 cubits long, and 5 cubits high, according to the measure of all the hangings of the court. And the pillars in the entry were 4, with sockets of brass, and their heads and gravings of silver. The pins also of the tabernacle, and of the court round about he made of brass. These are the instruments of the tabernacle of the testimony, which were counted according to the commandment of Moses in the ceremonies of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest, which Bezaleel the son of Uri the son of Hur of the tribe of Judah had made as the Lord commanded by Moses, having for his companion Oholiab the son of Achizamech of the tribe of Dan, who also was an excellent artificer in wood, and worker in tapestry and embroidery, in violet, purple, scarlet, and fine linen. All the gold that was spent in the work of the sanctuary, and that was offered in gifts, was 29 talents, and 730 sickles, according to the standard of the sanctuary. And it was offered by them that went to be numbered, from 20 years old and upwards, of 603,550 men able to bear arms. There were moreover 100 talents of silver, whereof were cast the sockets of the sanctuary, and of the entry where the veil hangeth. 100 sockets were made of 100 talents, 1 talent being reckoned for every socket. And of the 1,775 he made the heads of the pillars, which also he overlaid with silver. And there were offered of brass also 72,000 talents, and 400 sickles besides, of which were cast the sockets in the entry of the tabernacle of the testimony, and the altar of brass with the grate thereof, and all the vessels that belong to the use thereof, and the sockets of the court as well round about as in the entry thereof, and the pins of the tabernacle and of the court round about. End of chapter 38. Chapter 39. And he made of violet and purple, scarlet and fine linen, the vestments for Aaron to wear when he ministered in the holy places, as the Lord commanded Moses. So he made an ephod of gold, violet and purple, and scarlet twice dyed, and fine twisted linen, with embroidered work, and he cut thin plates of gold, and drew them small into threads, that they might be twisted with the woof of the aforesaid colours, and 2 borders coupled one to the other in the top on either side, and a girdle of the same colours as the Lord had commanded Moses. He prepared also 2 onyx stones, fast set and closed in gold, and graven by the art of a lapidary, with the names of the children of Israel, and he set them in the sides of the ephod, for a memorial of the children of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made also a rational with embroidered work, according to the work of the ephod, of gold, violet, purple, and scarlet twice dyed, and fine twisted linen, 4 square, double of the measure of a span. And he set 4 rows of precious stones in it. In the first row was a sardius, a topaz, and emerald. In the second, a carbuncle, a sapphire, and a jasper. In the third, a lyncurius, an agate, and an amethyst. In the fourth, a chrysolite, an onyx, and a beryl, set and enclosed in gold by their rows. And the 12 stones were engraved with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, each one with its several name. They made also in the rational little chains linked one to another of the purest gold, and 2 hooks, and as many rings of gold. And they set the rings on either side of the rational, on which rings the 2 golden chains should hang, which they put into the hooks that stood out in the corners of the ephod. These both before and behind so answered one another, that the ephod and the rational were bound together, being fastened to the girdle, and strongly coupled with rings, which a violet fillet joined, lest they should flag loose, and be moved one from the other, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made also the tunic of the ephod, all of violet, and a hole for the head in the upper part at the middle, and a woven border round about the hole. And beneath at the feet pomegranates of violet, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen. And little bells of the purest gold, which they put between the pomegranates at the bottom of the tunic round about, to wit, a bell of gold and a pomegranate, wherewith the high priest went adorned when he discharged his ministry, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made also fine linen tunics with woven work for Aaron and his sons, and mitres with their little crowns of fine linen, and linen breeches of fine linen, and a girdle of fine twisted linen, violet, purple, and scarlet twice dyed, of embroidery work, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made also the plate of sacred veneration of the purest gold, and they wrote on it with the engraving of a lapidary, "The Holy of the Lord." And they fastened it to the mitre with a violet fillet, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So all the work of the tabernacle and of the roof of the testimony was finished, and the children of Israel did all things which the Lord had commanded Moses. And they offered the tabernacle, and the roof, and the whole furniture, the rings, the boards, the bars, the pillars, and their sockets, the cover of rams' skins dyed red, and the other cover of violet skins, the veil, the ark, the bars, the propitiatory, the table with the vessels thereof, and the loaves of proposition, the candlestick, the lamps, and the furniture of them with the oil, the altar of gold and the ointment, and the incense of spices, and the hanging in the entry of the tabernacle, the altar of brass, the grate, the bars, and all the vessels thereof, the laver with the foot thereof, the hangings of the court, and the pillars with their sockets, the hanging in the entry of the court, and the little cords and the pins thereof. Nothing was wanting of the vessels that were commanded to be made for the ministry of the tabernacle, and for the roof of the covenant. The vestments also, which the priests, to wit, Aaron and his sons, used in the sanctuary, the children of Israel offered, as the Lord had commanded. And when Moses saw all things finished, he blessed them. End of chapter 39. Chapter 40. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, The first month, the first day of the month, thou shalt set up the tabernacle of the testimony, and shalt put the ark in it, and shalt let down the veil before it. And thou shalt bring in the table, and set upon it the things that are commanded according to the rite. The candlestick shall stand with its lamps, and the altar of gold whereon the incense is burnt, before the ark of the testimony. Thou shalt put the hanging in the entry of the tabernacle, and before it the altar of holocaust, the laver between the altar and the tabernacle, and thou shalt fill it with water. And thou shalt encompass the court with hangings, and the entry thereof. And thou shalt take the oil of unction, and anoint the tabernacle with its vessels, that they may be sanctified. The altar of holocaust, and all its vessels, the laver with its foot, thou shalt consecrate all with the oil of unction, that they may be most holy. And thou shalt bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the tabernacle of the testimony, and having washed them with water, thou shalt put on them the holy vestments, that they may minister to me, and that the unction of them may prosper to an everlasting priesthood. And Moses did all that the Lord had commanded. So in the 1st month of the 2nd year, the 1st day of the month, the tabernacle was set up. And Moses reared it up, and placed the boards and the sockets and the bars, and set up the pillars, and spread the roof over the tabernacle, putting over it a cover, as the Lord had commanded. And he put the testimony in the ark, thrusting bars underneath, and the oracle above. And when he had brought the ark into the tabernacle, he drew the veil before it, to fulfill the commandment of the Lord. And he set the table in the tabernacle of the testimony at the north side without the veil, setting there in order the loaves of proposition, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He set the candlestick also in the tabernacle of the testimony over against the table on the south side, placing the lamps in order according to the precept of the Lord. He set also the altar of gold under the roof of the testimony over against the veil, and burnt upon it the incense of spices, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he put also the hanging in the entry of the tabernacle of the testimony, and the altar of holocaust of the entry of the testimony, offering the holocaust and the sacrifices upon it, as the Lord had commanded. And he set the laver between the tabernacle of the testimony and the altar, filling it with water. And Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and feet, when they went into the tabernacle of the covenant, and went to the altar, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He set up also the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, drawing the hanging in the entry thereof. After all things were perfected, the cloud covered the tabernacle of the testimony, and the glory of the Lord filled it. Neither could Moses go into the tabernacle of the covenant, the cloud covering all things, and the majesty of the Lord shining, for the cloud had covered all. If at any time the cloud removed from the tabernacle, the children of Israel went forward by their troops. If it hung over, they remained in the same place. For the cloud of the Lord hung over the tabernacle by day, and a fire by night, in the sight of all the children of Israel, throughout all their mansions. End of chapter 40.